start with discipleship. Being a disciple, and it's in there, the translations and what it means are in your notes. But what a disciple literally is somebody who learns. Somebody that is committed to learning. Matheo is, or mathetes means to teach, or no, I'm sorry, mathetes is a pupil. Matheteo, it means to teach. So disciple literally translated means one who is taught. Glenn's question was very, very, very profound and very deep. Can a person be saved and not be a disciple? Or can a person be disciple? I think is that how you phrased it? How many folks do you know that are saved folks that are not engaged in learning anything? They're engaged in coming to church. They're engaged in listening to preaching. But as far as how committed they are to actually taking the time to learn, I'm not going to ask you to put a number on that percentage, but it's definitely a percentage.
If I said 50, it may be well beyond that.
You said that, not me, but I don't disagree with it. But you have plenty of churchgoers saying that they're saved, and because salvation is a function of faith, I have a real hard time saying that somebody who professes faith and who is doing what they understand at the time is not saved, regardless of how engaged they are in learning or not. That can get real dicey and real hairy, and I try to veer away from that discussion a little bit, unless I'm dealing with a one-on-one type of situation. I try not to make blanket statements about that. But in our culture today, there is definitely a difference between somebody who's saved from the way we conceptualize these things, and somebody who's committed themselves to learning and to not as an intellectual exercise, and I put that in here, that discipleship was not an academic, intellectual exercise. It's not just getting head knowledge, but it was a relational process that transferred principles and taught what those principles look like in daily living. So to be a disciple in their day was that wasn't just going to seminary and getting a bunch of book information and learning a bunch of stuff, but it was I'm going to study under somebody who's going to teach me principles about life. And then while walking with them and relating with them and spending time with them, I'm going to learn what those principles look like in practice. And I will tell you that while everybody who is saved is not necessarily a disciple or not engaged in discipleship, every single disciple is saved. That was Christ's definition of who's going to be part of the kingdom and who's not. If you are his disciple, you're part of the kingdom. If you're not his disciple, but in their culture at that time, anybody that wasn't his disciple wasn't part of the kingdom yet. And that is what baptism is actually about. The baptismal process was a formalized public declaration of your discipleship. And that's, get to you in 1 second, that if you were going to be the disciple of Glenn would baptize you in the name of Glenn, and then you would be Glenn's disciple as a formalized declaration. If you were going to be a disciple of Delisa, then Delisa would baptize you in the name of Delisa, and then you would be Delisa's disciple. And you would study under her and live with her and walk with her and do stuff with her to learn her philosophies, her perspective on what life was like, and she would teach. And so when Christ went and got disciples and made disciples, he got his 12, and then other people would start to follow him. He was teaching them spiritual principles to define and help them understand what the world was about and what life looked like, and then what those principles look like in practice, the most important of which being God's love. Whole other conversation, but that's what he's teaching and what he's presenting. So he gives the Great Commission. He says, go out and teach of all nations, baptize and baptize folks, and then teach them what I've told you. He's telling them, go out and make disciples. We talk about getting people saved much more than we do making disciples out of people. And getting saved, as you said, when sins are forgiven, your past is no longer an issue in defining who you are, then there's all of these things. But beyond that, there's still a lifetime of learning that God is looking to relate with you from. A lot of people will get saved because I just want out of my situation. I want because they want the past gone, they want this gone, and what happens after that? You know, somebody says, I want to get baptized because I want a new start. That's beautiful, that's great. Baptism is a commitment to discipleship. Baptism is a commitment to, I want to spend or commit to learning of who Christ was, of who God is, learning how to relate with him, learning how what he teaches about what he teaches can impact the way that I interact with my friends, the relationship that I have with my family, the way that I see myself, learning how interacting with God can